Hills. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills at which formal action may be taken. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. Please join me in the Pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Baker.
Here.
Mr. DiGiannino.
Here.
Mrs. Hoppy. Here. Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mrs. Santoro. Here. Mrs. Tober. Here. Ms. Brochu. Here. Ms. Birch. Here. Mrs. Lee. Here. Correspondence? Yes, we have two letters this time. We have a letter from the New Jersey Office of Fiscal Accountability regarding our compliance with the final audit report, and we have a letter from a substitute teacher. Both of them should be in your packets. Yes. Kendall, you want to start us off?
Having some printer difficulties today, so. I'm Kendall. I'm the student leader board representative for BHS. Not too much has gone on this November. I'll be a little debrief on what has happened. I'm getting cold all the time. Just yesterday, girls soccer made it to the sectional finals. We didn't end up winning, but it was a really, really close game, and I'm really proud of all my friends who made it in that game. Football season ended at Hillside on Saturday, but the guys played an awesome season, and everyone's really proud of them also. Last week, the BHS Publications, which just includes the yearbook and newspaper teams, went to Columbia University in New York City, and we brought back a lot of knowledge to fill our publications with, and also we ate a lot of really good food. Also, Almost Maine shows were a hit, and the cast definitely poured a lot of time and effort in the show, and that really, really showed. It was a great time. This last weekend was the no homework policy for all BHS students, and that was definitely a big relief for everyone after the end of the marking period, because everyone had a lot of essays and tests, and everyone was really happy to get a break. Some people went away, and I know a lot of seniors took the time for college applications, because even though ED and EA applications were due November 1st for most of them, there's still a lot of regular decision applications that are going through, so we're still hard working at that. Their blood drive, which is run by NHS, is happening right now, and there's a lot of sign-ups. I'm not really sure if that has to do with the cookies that will be there or not, but either way, it's for a good cause. The dodgeball tournament is scheduled for tomorrow night, and I know there's supposed to be reports for snow, but there's banners in the media center that really advertise a really nice and new initiative that student council made. And there's a lot of teams signing up. My favorite part is the costume contest, which you get to design like a costume with your team, and then those people get like an award. I think it's food. So that's it for this November. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Much of our conversation around the last few meetings has been focused on the random drug testing policy, and I thought that it made sense for Dr. Nigel to come talk to us a little bit about what that implementation looks like at the high school. So thank you, Scott, for being willing and able. And
no problem. Okay. So what I tried to do is just explain what it looks like from start to finish when it comes to how we actually implement the regulation. You know, it's written in policy, there's a regulation, but that actually has to be executed. So I just wanted to give you an idea as to how that goes about from start to finish. So the first thing that happens is prevention specialists, I'll call them PSI, they're the company that we use. They reach out to me directly and they say, here's some dates this month. And they're always random, some at the beginning of the month, some at the end of the month. They say what works. So I reach out to the other administrators and come up with a date where we're going to run the random drug testing. The next step for me is I ask our data specialists to generate a report. So in Power School, there's a field that says whether or not a student is in the random drug testing pool. And that's what I do is it's basically a yes or a no, and then I ask the data specialist to run the student ID numbers for that pool. So he'll just generate an Excel spreadsheet that has, at this point, I think it's a little over 500 numbers. That spreadsheet goes to the company for random selection. So a couple of days before we're actually going to do the testing, the company sends me 2 lists, a primary list and an alternate list. The primary list has 10 numbers, the alternate list has 10 numbers. And again, they're student ID numbers. So I don't even know, they don't know who they are, I don't know who they are. I have to actually go into Power School and punch in the number, and then a student comes up. So I go through and I do that, I print out all the students' schedules, and I get them all arranged, and I say, okay, here are the primary schedules, here are the alternate schedules. I then take a look at the time we're doing the test, about what period is it. Usually the test, when we do about 10, they usually take about 2 periods, so I'll look at the kids' schedules and say, okay, where are the non-academic classes if we can. It doesn't always work that way, but if we can pull 5 kids from second period or third period and 5 kids from fourth period and minimize the amount of academic time out, that's what we try to do. We set up in the PAC, I shouldn't say, behind the PAC in the green room. There's a PAC office back there. There's bathrooms back there, so it's a nice private area. We set up back there, and then what we do is we actually call the classroom, and we ask the teachers to send a student to the main office. So it's, hi, this is Dr. Nigel, can you please send so-and-so to the main office? The student walks out thinking they're going to the main office, because again, we're not trying to get anybody excited, we're just trying to follow through with the regulation. And in the hallway, there's another administrator who hands them a piece of paper. And the piece of paper says, I'm going to just read it here, your student ID number was randomly selected for the testing pool for drug testing. In order to protect confidentiality, I'm handing you this piece of paper rather than speaking to you. You are not allowed to use your cell phone during the testing process. We will now proceed to the PAC office where testing will be completed. Students escorted to the PAC office. When they get there, I take the list and I say, here's your schedule, here's the primary list, here's your number, there's the number that was generated, just to confirm that the number matches the number on their schedule. I say, I'm sorry, you're the lucky winner today. And then, depending on if it's a male or female student, either I will escort them into the waiting room outside the restroom. It could be, if it's a female, it's Colleen Butler. And then we introduce the technician to the student by ID number. We actually don't even say the student's name. We say, this is 3174, or just read off the number. Technician checks it off his list. Then he goes over the process with the student, make sure they don't have any questions. Student goes into the restroom by himself, comes out of the restroom, and we're sitting in the waiting room with the technician. So student's never alone, never with the technician alone. The technician then tests the sample, does a dip test on the sample, and does an alcohol swab, which they put in the student's mouth, and they ask the student just swirl around, get the alcohol test wet. Within a minute or two, the technician tells the student, you're good. And so far, that's all I've heard, is you're good. And then we tell the student, great, good news, I'm going to call your parents and let them know after this is all done. And do you have any questions or concerns that you have? And typically the student says, no, makes sense, it was quick, it was good. And I would say on average, the last time we did it, students usually out of class about 10 to 12 minutes total. That's from the time the student gets called out of class to the time that we're sending them back to class. So it's pretty efficient if you think about that. We're able to do all the kids that we pull in 1 month in about 2 class periods. The worst case scenario, and this only happened one time, is the student didn't have to go, has to wait, have some water, they then get recalled for testing, so it's a little bit longer than 10 to 12 minutes. Typically, that's not the problem. And I keep saying typically because, again, we prepare for when there's not that, but it's a pretty smooth and uneventful process. And so I think so far, it's ran much more smoothly than I would have anticipated. There's been very few hiccups in implementing the board regulation and the board policy. So that's it.
Scott, can you just tell people, because I didn't know where these were, the bathrooms that you're using and where physically they are in this building?
They are, so if you walk along the PAC down to the cafeteria would go downstairs and left. If you go right, there's a green room that's used for musicals and plays. It's literally behind the PAC. So you have to go around the PAC here, it's back there. So it's an area where no students are passing by. There really is no reason for students to be back there, so it's as private of an area as we could provide.
Scott, how many students have been tested today?
20.
20. How many parents have called that expressed concern?
Since the beginning of school year?
Yeah.
0.
I think someone reported at the last meeting or the one prior to that
that it seemed as though students weren't perhaps signing up for extracurriculars that they would have normally done. Do you have any indication that that's actually occurring?
No one even has told me that. The number right now, last time I checked the testing pool, and again, we just have the fall and the winter sport, is 500. So what I'll get to see, and we didn't run that number last year, we didn't say how many total curriculars did we have, or extracurriculars. After the spring season, I guess I'll have a full year. So I don't know. There's no way for me to look and see. There was no number that I had that was a solid data, piece of data that I could compare it to.
But just through informal reports from coaches or extracurricular parents, you haven't heard that there's been a downward trend or a significant impact? Thank you.
So no one gets dragged out of class?
No, we like to do all things here. We try to do it discreetly, and again, the goal is not to embarrass or alarm. The goal is to implement the policy in the least disruptive way possible. And I feel like, again, nothing's perfect. We're always going to take feedback and look at what we can do. Can we do it better? I thought last time went as smooth as it could for right now. And afterwards, the administrators who do it meet and say, okay, what can we do better? How can we do that better? Were there any issues? Were there any feedback? Talk to the parents. We split up the calls. Dr. Corbett and I called parents immediately. I would break up the 10 students into 5 to 5 and call them, and then say, please let us know if you have any questions or any interpretations about the regulation. And they're usually thankful and happy to hear that.
Now, it sounds like it's done in the least disruptive manner.
And the kids don't know until they come outside anyway, you're saying?
They don't know, and again, we don't even talk to them outside, because again, and the reason we ask them not to use their cell phone is,
No pictures, no
right,
text.
let's just do this, let's get this out of the way, and then we don't need to call in and get excited about it. It's really kind of a boring process, but I'm okay with that. That's the goal.
Well, thank you, Scott, because we've had a lot of discussions here, and we've heard different things, but I'm glad you cleared it up. Thank
No
you very
problem,
much.
no problem. And the reason no one knows about it is because no one knows about it, right? We're doing a good job. The goal is that it's not this huge thing. We're not making a scene. We're doing it quietly and respecting students' privacy.
Is everybody good with that?
Thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Scott.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Before I go on to student recognition, I just did want to take a minute to congratulate Sarah Suey. She is not here this evening, but as many of you know, she won the election for Somerset County Freeholder, so we celebrate that. And to Janice Virtue, who won her re-election bid for the board seat, so I do want to include those. All right, I have...
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Jamie won.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie. I didn't mean to ignore you.
I didn't even think about it.
I didn't either. Thank you, Mindy.
Everyone just lighted.
Thanks, Mindy.
That was good. I have two students from the middle school who I would like to come up and stand in front of the crowd. Don't be bashful. Arden and Evie, come on up here. All right, I'll read a little bit about you while you look at all of them, and then we're going to take a picture. All right. Well, first of all, let me say I'm happy to see Arden and Evie because I haven't seen them in a while, right? My days at the middle school, I used to see them on a daily basis. Arden and Evie are both members of the middle school's forensic team. And Mr. T, their fearless leader, sent me an email recently to celebrate their accomplishments at the Montville Middle School tournament, in which Arden took first place in prose. And he noted, Arden, that this was your very first competition. My goodness. And Evie, I have to say, Evie, knowing you, I was not surprised that you took first place in improvisation. I can just imagine that. My favorite image of Evie is that at the Halloween party a few years back, I had to look at her costume for a long time because she was dressed as a banana, but there were some like tattoo things, and she was just a rotten banana. Not that I think you're rotten. It's just kind of is the picture I have of you in my head. Raquel Dickinson could not be here this evening. She took second place in prose and improvisation, but I do want to take a minute to just celebrate the accomplishments of these two young ladies.
What you said?
Were you nervous speaking publicly? Is that something that came easily to you, or? What do you think?
nervous up here. You don't even have to say anything.
All right, so pose and let them take nice pictures. And we can do this too, right? We waited for Evie's mom to get here. I saw you sneak in. Congratulations. Take care. Thank you. And last but not least, I do want to spend a couple of minutes reporting out on the progress that we have made toward our strategic plan. Many of you will remember that it's not a keyboard I usually use. We'll just go all the way backwards. It will probably be easy. Many of you will remember that the district embarked on a strategic plan in March of 2017. The prior plan had long expired, and there was a sense that perhaps we needed to renew our direction. So in April and May of 2017, there were 3 separate public meetings. About 100 people in the community came out. Those meetings, the first of which focused on strengths and challenges of the district, the second on creating a vision, and the third in identifying priority goals. We also had a survey that launched this with about 70 responses, and there was some work in terms of developing a state of the schools and a state of the community. The conversation kind of focused on where we were at that point and where we wanted to grow. When the goals were established, after a lot of conversation, they kind of fell across these 5 areas. There's definitely overlap when you consider them, but we did our best as an administrative team after these goals were established to identify steps that we could take and priorities. And in terms of considering those priorities, a couple of things I think are important to think about. You know, we thought about what would the indicators of success be, what we were trying to accomplish. We certainly had to look at budget and staffing and capital and facilities and grant processes, professional development that might be implicated. We talked about, from a constraint standpoint, what our schedule was, what staffing we have, the fact that time is always something that there is never enough of. And I just want to point out that when we go through this, you may notice that I never think of progress as being something that is even or linear. So you will notice that there are certain areas that we seem to have made great strides in, and others that may still warrant some further exploration. One of the things that came out of this process is a new mission statement for the district, and I will confess to you that one of the goals we said was to make the mission statement more memorable. I'm not necessarily sure that we were overly successful in that, because I still can't sort of recite this from memory. I think there are some key words that we can focus on as we go through this, but I will say that the ideas that it contains, we do try to look at sort of as a holistic guidepost in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. I think the goal in any mission statement and strategic plan is really to serve as a lens to kind of keep in front of all of our efforts, and that is something that we try to do. So I'm not going to read these slides, but I'm going to try to give you a sense of the detail for each of these initiatives, the steps that we have taken so far. So you can see from a teaching and learning standpoint, we have materials that we were purchasing from maker spaces. We have curriculum that was taking place in third grade classroom that we tried to sort of spread to other areas. The garden itself was integrated into the K-4 science curriculum so that there was work around weather and plants and animals and insects and how to really use that space from an instructional standpoint. At the middle school, we moved to a more integrated vocabulary program. We certainly expanded our technology. We have a certified tech teacher. We added a coding class. We had, Chef had a major initiative and purchased some 3D printers for us. The tech teacher got a grant for her robotics club. And the Burnsville Rec partnered with us to increase our after-school offerings to include babysitting and a ski club. At the high school, we also looked at the vocabulary instruction. We moved toward a more differentiated approach. The professional development for math teachers is focusing on problem solving to really enhance that authenticity. And Project Lead the Way was implemented this year into the Engineering 2 course. District-wide, in terms of the visual arts curriculum, we had a new field trip this year for our high school art students, and we do have some professional development areas that we are focusing on. Jen, is there anything you can, that I have not hit so far? Jen is definitely somebody who, worked to forward the strategic plan and to present on it last October. So she is definitely somebody who is very familiar with the nuts and bolts of it in ways that I might
And
not.
I think you spoke well, because we looked at some of this together too. And we're going to expand more of the art, though this is something we're just beginning, and I think there's been some interest in doing some more expansion in K-12 art.
In terms of 21st century learning, one of the things that came out of this was we were really looking for opportunities for learning that go beyond our four walls. The Community Relations Committee, that's a subcommittee of the board that had perhaps worked in the past, maybe not in such a focused manner, is now working to help us identify opportunities that are local. We decided to start with that. We also have invigorated our partnership with the Burnsville Library. This year, our new teachers toured the library in August. They all got library cards. The Youth Services librarian is partnering with the middle school to facilitate those lunch in the libraries. They've had a lot of good contacts for us. Excuse me. And the tech department at the library, the tech department here is supporting the library's mini golf fundraiser, so we feel good about that partnership. We've also begun to look into university partnerships. Our Project Lead the Way curriculum is aligned with universities across the country. We were originally excited by the fact that they had a partnership with Rowan, which seems to perhaps not being realized in the way that we envisioned it, but there is a long laundry list of schools that that curriculum is associated with. In terms of digital citizenship, we have a new course at the middle school, and we also infused curriculum that Somerset County provided called We're Not Buying It. It is a social media curriculum that is tied to media literacy, and that is now part of our health curriculum in grades 6 through 8. STEM education opportunities, we spoke about Project Lead the Way, we spoke about that new tech teacher, the new coding course, we have a robotics club that we launched last winter at the middle school, and the chef funding of materials for the robotics club. We sort of lumped health, wellness, and cultural engagement into one big arena, and I did my best to sort of parse some of this out. This is an area where there seemed to be more detail than perhaps in something like the visual arts area. This year, all of our staff is having affirmative action training, and we sent 2 teachers to training for SEED, which is Educational Equity and Diversity. What was the S for again? Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. That training is something that you'll see we're going to turnkey later on. In terms of our health and wellness, I tried to divide this up by district-wide and school.
because you will see that there is a long laundry list of parent participation, presentations for our staff, our students. One thing I think that comes across as I was collecting this information is that we've really been very fortunate to have a lot of partnerships just in terms of our own local groups. The HSA has been phenomenal about really getting on board and helping us to fund some presentations. We have a lot of municipal alliance funding, so there's really been a sense that, you know, we're not doing this on our own. One of the things that has happened at Bedwell, I will confess, when I first read Hoberman Spheres, I was like, I don't know what those are. But I see some Bedwell teachers here. Those, yes, there you go. Everybody's seen them, but I don't know how to describe them. They're plastic and they collapse and you can pull them apart. And they apparently have use now in terms of wellness. You can Google it. And Mrs. Pike has gone into classrooms and demonstrated breathing techniques using those spheres, and all the classes have one of them. The Bedwell Wellness Committee is in full swing, and they also have a room dedicated to wellness. At the middle school, last year the middle school completed the Kindness Challenge, was another thing that you can Google. And they have their certificate. I think it's on their website now. We added that digital citizenship course. We have a new wellness class in 7th grade in addition to our 5th grade wellness class. And was it last month or the month before, I forget, when we had the visitors come in and talk to us about our school safety and climate initiative, which is being launched this year at the middle school. The middle school and the high school both have a grading floor that's been established, which is something that when we think about using assessment in ways to really measure learning and motivate students, we feel that that's something that's in students' best interest from a health and wellness perspective. At the high school, you can see that there was a Laugh More, Stress Less week last year, a student wellness fair. We have another partnership with Sioux Fall, who came in to talk about empowerment for young women who are new to the country. We have some new parent-student events that are happening. Shop Right Now. Family Science, we're planning a BMS Tech Night this spring. We also have our bilingual family nights have really kind of grown. If you're somebody who has attended any of those events, they have a very different feel these days, I think, than they did when they launched. They are crowded. They are families from all different schools coming for all different reasons, and really a community of volunteers and staff members who are supporting those efforts. The bilingual HSA coordinators have been a wonderful resource for us, and they have joined us this year in our district leadership events. One of the things that came under health and wellness was to strengthen the drug and alcohol prevention and education programs. That's something that we've spoken a lot about. The new policies that we've spoken about in terms of random student drug testing and the breathalyzer policies were part of that. We also are partnering again with the HSA in terms of parent programming. Empower Somerset just had an event recently, and Guidance has had programming at all schools pretty much, but these are the ones that we're focusing on in terms of drug and alcohol prevention. So Municipal Alliance funded the film If They Had Known to all students in the high school. Last night it was shown to parents. If you missed it, I'm sure we'll have it again. And High Focus came in and had presentations for both parents and students on marijuana and vaping last spring. Our facilities, we kind of looked at in terms of parking, security, and then the spaces themselves. You can see all of the work that is being done there. Again, funding for the flexible seating classroom at the high school came through a grant from Steelcase. So in terms of next steps, these are not meant to be exhaustive in the sense that we are always looking for what we can add to them. but we are definitively adding Project Lead the Way curriculum into our intro engineering course next year. We will channel ideas from the Community Relations Committee to the Curriculum Committee in terms of those authentic teaching and learning experiences. We're going to continue to seek out local professional partnerships and enhance our field trips, which we think has great value in terms of just overall learning experiences as well as opportunities for the visual arts curriculum. And that curriculum is going to be rewritten next summer. I'm going to let you read those. Bedwell is planning a big maker fair in the spring. Alan Thurlow is all about that, so we look forward to seeing what that looks like. Again, Municipal Alliance is funding many of these. We are looking at our Special Olympics program in the spring and ensuring that we're really embracing that unified approach to sports programming. We will continue to explore alternate grading options. The administrators are reading a book collectively and talking about ways that that could be meaningful, and the teachers who went to that SEED professional development last summer will be turnkeying those ideas for us soon. The recess area behind the middle school should be in place next fall. It just went out to bid. In terms of security, the administrators at the building level and I are working on reunification planning this year. CRG mapping is something that the county is looking at from a standpoint of first responders as a way that they can have digital maps of buildings that could be used in case of an incident, and that's something that we are thinking about. Our major construction opportunities we will continue to explore, and our rekeying will be completed. One thing that, just to kind of bring us back to that mission statement, I think the key words when I think about it, we're trying to look for innovation. We're trying to leverage our engaged community to develop those authentic learning experiences, and the goal is thoughtful, impactful global citizens. Later in the meeting, one of the things that board members will talk about are experiences they had when we went to school boards convention last month, and one of the strands that I went to, they talked about this idea of a portrait of a graduate. What is that graduate of our school system look like, and how do you take these kind of phrases and ideas and turn it into something that perhaps is memorable from a visual standpoint? And I think that could have value for us, certainly. I also think we have to start to think about, okay, we developed this in the spring of 2017, and it was originally envisioned as a 3-year commitment. So you saw how there was a gap between the old strategic plan and this one. I guess my overall focus is always, how do you develop a mechanism so that you are continuously improving and not just doing it in these sort of chunks. So those are the steps that we will take in addition to the nuts and bolts that were laid out here. Is there anybody who has any questions? Okay, I'll take that as leaving them speechless. Okay?
What is the plan in terms of having one or more unified sports programs?
And I will be honest with you, Greg, that is not something that we have fully developed yet. What I can tell you is that, you see, there we go. I can tell you that we have a Special Olympics event in the spring at the high school for pre-K through 12 students who are from our school system as well as the Bedminster school system. I think it would not be difficult for us to look at that from a way to broaden it, to perhaps make it an event that is not just limited to those populations. I think there is, we certainly have a commitment to students who want to participate in sports, having that availability regardless of the challenges that they face. But is that the limit to that? No, not necessarily. Those are the things I think that we think of as the first steps. As I said, when I kind of put this together, the first thing that I noticed was that there are areas where I feel like, oh, we've really done a lot of work. You know, when I look at security, when I look at health and wellness, I say we've taken great strides. We've done a lot of heavy lifting. Are there other areas that perhaps we haven't moved forward as quickly? Yeah, but to me, that's not unusual in the sense that if you're trying to bite off, you know, a lot, you're not going to necessarily forward every agenda item at the same speed. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. That concludes the superintendent's report. Is there any discussion?
Any public questions and comments on the superintendent's report or anything in it? Okay. Okay, we very much welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there is a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels that there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, I or the superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public questions and comments will be limited to 30 minutes. Thank you for your input. Any agenda items, comments? Okay. Approval of minutes? We have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, thank you.
I just have one comment about the minutes. In the executive session, I had that Sarah Sui was present, which she was not, so I've corrected that already. We have a motion there. Anybody, any other discussion?
Seeing none.
Roll call. Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiorgino? Mrs. Hoppy?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees?
Yes. Okay, Bob, do you want to give the finance?
Sure.
report?
The Finance Committee met yesterday, and we had a long meeting, about 2 hours, so if you can bear with me, I've got 8 or 9 topics to go over. The first item is we talked about Power School, and the main thing we talked about is to change the hosting of Power School from our own server to the cloud. So it gives you a lot of advantages. It's a lot safer from data security, from natural disasters. It also saves time for employees, and so the cost is pretty much equal. It's a slight increase, so we're recommending that we go ahead with that. We also talked about 2 other options that Power School has, which is one is analytics, where you can put all these statistics into about students and stuff and run reports, and that looks really great. I know the administration's interested in that, but it's pretty expensive. So I know Jen went back and asked can we get a free 90-day trial, and they said no, but we'll give you some extra money off. We'll give you a cheaper rate. So we're still going to work on that to get get the number down. We have a few ideas how to get that number down. The other option was, which is even more expensive, is to put all the school forms in one place. In other words, all the forms, all the parents fill out would be in one place. But it's a lot of money, and we got to really make sure that whether we want to do that, and maybe in the future, but we got to think about where all the forms, what would it really do, things like that. So that was our Power School topic. We talked about Bedminster tuition and the contract, and I'll be happy to report that Jamie's worked with the president of the Bedminster School, and they've agreed to pay us $75,000 by the end of the year. And if we can agree on a contract, we'll get the rest of the money next year. Okay. But I think the group felt that we can do a better job with our tuition calculation and getting the numbers tighter. So one good step is the demographics, because if you know how many kids are coming from both schools, you can figure out what the tuition rate is. So we're going to get some more demographic information. And it's sort of like your income tax. You try to figure what your withholding ought to be, so you and Uncle Sam are fairly close. It's Bedminster and us are in the same deal. You try to tell them how much we think we're going to spend, and they tell us how many students they're going to send, and we're always off by a fair amount. So if we can get that number tighter, that makes their swing very small. Okay.
Well, what are you referring to in that aspect? I mean, not the tuition number, just the number of students we're sending?
Actually, both.
Both. So not using the 841?
No, we still use the 841, but see, but don't forget, when you estimate, you're making a guess what you're going to have based on, see, the 841A, you put the hard numbers in that you spent.
Yeah.
You're estimating going forward.
Because I thought we were told that there was the estimation was based on this calculation. That's not.
It's based on last year's number, and you try to figure out what it's going to increase by or go down by. So with an estimate, it's sort of like what I said about your income tax. You kind of guess what you're going to make or what you're going to spend, and so there's a lot of number crunching. You can do that, and the more time that you spend on it, the tighter the number is. But again, it's only an estimate, because if we spend more money, or you send us more students, or you send us less students, the number needs to rise. We talked about the purchase of a new 24-person bus, and it's on the agenda. So that we negotiated a price of about $64,000, and we won't have to pay the first $14,000 annual payment a year from now. So we're going to retire one of our older 24-person buses, so we're not increasing our fleet, but we're just getting rid of an old bus that's got way too many miles on it. We talked about salaries for bus drivers, and that's on the agenda. Heather looked at what other bus drivers are making around this part of New Jersey, and we've been having trouble retaining and finding new bus drivers. So we recommended that the bus drivers will all receive a raise. It's about a $7 per hour raise, so that will get them more competitive with what's in the marketplace. We reviewed the letter that you all received from the Office of Financial Accounting about 2 years ago on the number of students for state aid. So that's come down to only $48,000. So we're going to have to give up $48,000 of our state aid, which was back it was 2 years ago, Heather?
Yeah.
It was 2 years back, so we're going to have to pay that money back this year, okay? We also talked about, we just had a review of the affirmative action documents that contractors and vendors, so every contractor and vendor has to prove to the state that they are following the affirmative action rules. And we need to see those documents. And so he found a few that we were lacking, so we went back to the contractors and we got those. So we'll see. It's a review, it's not an audit, so they may write something, they may not write something, so we're not sure. We talked about the YMCA contract, that they come in our building in the summertime, and they use our facilities for about 8 weeks, right? 8 weeks. So they want to expand their use, and so we'd like to reopen the contract to negotiate if they want to expand it, what's the right price, what's the right amount of people that we're going to need. So we're going to go back and talk with them on that. And the last item, we talked about ice hockey. So as you know, the ice hockey program is with two other schools right now. It's with Somerville and Middlesex, and that contract with those two other schools is coming to an end. So the parent group wants to see if they can still get our support for the next 2 years. So they're going to come to our finance meeting in December and tell us how many kids they think they're going to have, who's going to have the most, all those things. And it's going to be up to the board to decide whether we need to still fund it a little bit or stop it. Because once the numbers get low, it's not viable for the board to support it anymore. So I'd like to move items 1 through 9 on the agenda. Number 9's on the addendum, and we got a grant from Atlantic Health for AED. So where is that going to go? Do you know?
It's in the high school.
Oh, it's in the high school, just, okay. Because I know we have one out in the field, and I don't know how many we have in the village. Okay. So it looks like, any questions? All right.
Mr. Baker?
Okay, so can we just talk about maybe under number 5, approved parent organization fundraisers? We had a discussion about this in policy, the canning, and how we feel about that as a board, whether that's a fundraiser that we want to support. So canning, as was described in the meeting, is basically the students stand outside of a store with cans and then are just given money. They're not providing any baked goods, any services, anything. They're just standing there collecting money. So, you know, we kind of discussed that and wanted to have some feedback as to whether we think that's showing our students in the best light.
Well, plus, you know, the kids do a lot in the community, and they do volunteer their time, but I don't know if the message that we're sending is a positive one. You know, I think that we all need to work for what we want. So, you know, I mean, put some baked goods out there and somebody will buy a brownie. I'll buy a brownie. You know, but I just think, you know, we used to do car washes when I was little, a zillion years ago. So, you know, that's my position and how I feel. You know, I think it's a teaching tool that we can take this as. I don't know if you want to open up the
I
conversation.
think we were talking about having the kids actually do something to earn the money as opposed to just standing there and collecting the money. That was the main idea. We like a lot of the other projects that they do, and but this one was in question.
Yeah, I know that for years that we've said yes, and they've been doing it for years and years, but that doesn't mean that we just take a look at it now.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering what canning was. Children can all the time around the house.
And they're not professionals.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I said. No, I don't think it presents the students in a good light. I don't think it sends the right message. Yeah, I don't, I mean, you know, I don't see any merit in it. I support it.
Vote to
Except everything's like date.
We're going to take that out and vote to that separate, except for one.
Make a motion to accept 5 except for D, which would be the Booster Club baseball canning at the local supermarkets.
Are you gonna make a motion to take it out?
Take that out and say yes to everything else.
Or, and we vote for that separately? Right, should actually be separate. Yeah. So what you do is you say it's gonna take, and you have like 5, I guess,
Eight
Ds.
minus.
Oh, is it 5 Ds? Is that correct?
5A.
Oh, canon is D, right?
Okay.
Because along with the kids, I mean, because I think you've all been involved in that when kids are out there asking for money. And sometimes it actually is them talking too. It's a presentation presenting what they're raising money for and just being out there talking. And, you know, sometimes it's scary just to do that with that can in your hand, asking them for money, telling them this is our, what you call this is what we do every year, this is where we go, this is why we do that, and we were asking for your support. So that's, you know, that's a big thing too for some people, just to have that, you know, that skill to go out there and do that little public, you know what I mean, speaking to people you don't know and ask for something. So, that's an interesting way to look at that.
I think there's ample opportunity though when they are providing a service or, you know, we talked a lot about car washes, bake sales. Those are the things that we typically see. I think the band has the fruit fundraiser.
Ski team sells raffle tickets, 50/50s.
You know, I think there's a lot of opportunity to give something with asking for something. So that was kind of the give and take, and that ability to approach someone and speak to them about what you are collecting money for, I think would still exist, absent of just straight up canning. So I don't know that we'd be taking that away from any student.
Maybe they just need to redesign the canning.
And I guess it goes back to the point that what do we do to actually earn something instead of just asking for something? Like, I think that's an important part. And I get what you're saying, but as Heather said, there is ample opportunity for them to talk during other activities and present their case. But it's like, I hate to say this, but it's like getting something for nothing, sort of. So that was our general feeling when we discussed it.
So the baseball has others, they have selling shorts and other merchandise. Here's one, the baseball Booster Club baseball, and then they have baseball and softball at Fairmont Tavern. I don't know what that means. That's what they're selling them?
They sell tickets to parents to come to.
At the tavern?
And then they have, well, I know for soccer, they had like a basket raffle.
And so the third thing is the canning. So what you're saying is that they have something other than these 3 items that they can do, or they're doing, that we've already approved. I don't remember, so I don't know which one it was.
We will.
Also, but this is the only 3 that they have now.
Well, they could put more on it.
That's what's on this one, I don't know.
Do they have other ones that, I don't remember. Do we?
These are the only ones that they have proposed this year at this point.
Okay. And now, this was prior to given to us. Who actually looks at the fundraisers before we get them? Is this, I
We
guess,
changed the process, so it used to be that the principal would look at them, and then they came to you before they came to me, and now we have the principal looking at them, and they come to me before they come to you.
okay, so you looked at it prior to us looking at it? Okay. Okay.
So Jamie, can I make a motion that we remove 5D from the finance, and then we can vote on remaining?
Yeah.
Yeah, second. Second.
Okay.
And vote.
And vote on 5D separately.
I think we're voting to remove it.
Motion is to remove it.
To take it out completely, even though it was approved prior by the principal and the...
There's no approval unless it's for
Recommended for approval. Recommended for approval. Right. I mean, they reviewed it. Yeah.
didn't want to have to.
If somebody doesn't want to remove it, they
Oh, to remove it.
All right, so we have a motion to remove.
And a second. All right, any further discussion on anything else within finance? Are you ready for me to take the? All right. This is on all of them with that inclusion of that being removed by D. Okay. So it's 1 through 9, except that D is being removed from 5.
But we haven't voted on it, we have to vote on removing D.
First to remove D,
Yes,
And then we vote on 1 through.
then we vote on
yes.
on the finance.
Yes,
There's going to be
okay,
two votes.
there'll be 2
Yes,
votes.
yeah.
So first is, right now, we're just removing 5D. Okay?
We good?
All right. So, Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. DeGiacchino,
Yes.
Mrs. Hockey,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro.
Yes.
Mrs. Tober.
Yes.
Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Ms. Birch,
No.
and Mrs. Lees.
Yes.
So, the majority rules there, so we're removing 5D. All right, so now we're going to vote on 1 through 9 for the rest of these. Mr. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. DeGiacchino, Mrs. Hockey,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro,
Yes.
Mrs. Tober. Yes. Ms. Virtue,
Yes.
Ms. Birch,
Yes.
Mrs. Lees.
Yes.
Janice?
The curriculum committee met on Tuesday, November 6th, 2018. Gretchen Dempsey, Jen Schaffler, Scott Nigel, Grant Comer, Susan Fisher, and Michael Catelli joined the curriculum committee to present and explain the new course offerings and textbook proposals. Michael Catelli explained that during the past several years, the high school struggled with how they could continue to offer the AP World History course with such low enrollment. Coincidentally, in May 2018, the College Board made changes which solved this issue. The changes led to the following decisions. Bernards High School will no longer run AP World History. Instead, the high school will run AP Human Geography, starting with the 2019-2020 school year. A survey was administered to all 9th through 11th graders for feedback, and the results were positive. We look forward to this new course offering. Then Grant Comer explained that based upon our strategic plan, we will implement the Project Lead the Way, PLTW, curriculum for our engineering and problem-solving course in our engineering pathway. This year, we implemented the PLTW curriculum into our Engineering 2 course. So this would be the next step in the process. This semester course would allow students to apply for scholarships with successful course completion and/or PLTW assessment. After that, Susan Fisher, who was present, recommended, well, this is what I wrote. The recommendation from Susan is to alter the current semester elective courses of Introduction to Journalism, Advanced Journalism, and Publications to Introduction to Journalism, Journalism 1, Journalism 2, and Publications Honors. The introduction course is the only one-semester course in this sequence. The others are yearly courses. The proposed sequence provides the opportunity for journalism students to progress towards leadership in a 4-year program. It also adds honors level credit to the senior year publications course, the most demanding course of the sequence. All 4 courses will remain co-seated in one class and will run in a workshop model. Colleges look for students who have 4 years of interest in journalism and who are following that career path. So that would be a plus for the students. Then Jen Schaffler spoke about proposed courses. They are remediation in ELA, test preparation, and math test preparation. The creation of these courses are in response to state requirements to address PARCC ELA and PARCC Algebra 1 proficiency. Students who scored below 4 or 5 on PARCC ELA 10 or PARCC Algebra 1 must be remediated and then be offered the opportunity to retake the tests. Then we had proposals to adopt new textbooks for AP Statistics and AP Biology. We discussed PARCC data and how we can use it meaningfully. We are continuing to explore this. Lastly, we are recommending the approval of field trips, all of which have been pre-approved by the administration. So I'd like to move items 1 through 6 on the agenda and item 7 on the addendum.
I'm not familiar with human geography. Explain what that is and what the difference is between human geography and world history.
Yeah, I mean, we did think it was an interesting name. It's about geography and how humans have adapted to certain geographic locations. So we thought it would be an interesting one for students to explore in an AP class. It's a new AP course. Different cultures. And different cultures and how different cultures adapt, to desert environments, to,
It's more global.
based on Michael talking to kids.
It's actually a really nice class. The name just doesn't,
Yeah, right, it should be humans and geography, maybe would be clearer,
What was the problem with world history?
So the numbers were low. We had, over the years, considered whether we should continue it, but it would always hover around 15 students, so we had been staying with it. However, now the College Board said that there needs to be a prerequisite course to that course. So we would have to implement another course. They're changing how AP World History is made up. We had some questions about doing this prerequisite course, not to go into too much detail, but it would not give you AP credit. You would have to take this prerequisite course. We did not think with our low enrollment, if we added this second, prerequisite, students would be willing to do this. We thought that this AP Human Geography would be of interest, and with the survey of students, it seemed like they would.
The course, Michael said, also the curriculum in the AP World is very similar to the ninth grade curriculum. So there were many students who felt, he attested the low enrollment to the sense that kids felt like, I just did that, why do I want to keep going?
What's the prerequisite course for human geography?
It is a new
For
one.
human geography, for if we kept AP World,
Right, but
they,
you're saying not a prerequisite course.
They wanted us to implement a College Board prerequisite course.
For world history.
For world history.
So I'm just asking, you're saying
there's not one for-
that's
There's not
not,
one now.
so this is how many AP courses don't have a prerequisite?
This would be the first one that would have a prerequisite that would be.
How long has this course been an AP course?
4 years, I believe, or 5 years. Not that many. I mean, it was, it's not been around too long.
Right, so, okay, so it's a relatively unfamiliar course to colleges, I would imagine, if it hasn't been around very long. What was the process for doing the survey?
He was handing out a survey in the social studies classes, asking students, if you were to, have a choice next year, would you take these different courses? I mean, I can ask you more details about who we actually polled and not,
Yeah, I mean, how many courses were on the survey? What was the range of
That I
options?
don't know. I have to look into that.
Okay, yeah.
Tim, I think another issue with that prerequisite, we have to actually pay them for the curriculum for that course, and it's not even an AP course. So maybe they're trying to get into a new, field where they're selling curriculum to high schools that aren't AP. That's one of the things they wanted to do too. So I think that's one of the reasons they were hesitant in that.
When we looked at the textbook for the
human
geography class, it was sort of more like a sociology class to me, which we don't really offer, so I think we would do.
And does computer principal doesn't have a prerequisite, does it? So we have other APs that don't have.
So is it, it's an AP course that's within the history domain, is that?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Oh, the human.
I've been curious as to what the other options were.
We have many AP social
No, I mean,
studies
just what the other,
classes.
I mean, if we were swapping out, I would be curious.
But which other
As to
one?
what the other options were that we chose not to go with. That would be helpful.
Do you want me to read the course description?
No, that's
So you
okay.
have a better idea?
That's okay. I don't get it. Larry, are you okay with the?
Actually, I'd like to hear the course description.
What did you say?
Read your course description, please.
He would like to hear the course
You want me to
description.
read? Yeah. Okay, so the AP Human Geography course overview. This course is equivalent to an introductory college-level course in human geography. The course introduces students to the systematic study of patterns and processes that have shaped human understanding, use, and alteration of Earth's surface. Students employ spatial concepts and landscape analysis to examine socioeconomic organization and its environmental consequences. They also learn about the methods and tools geographers use in their research and applications. The curriculum reflects the goals of the National Geography Standards. The outline of the course is, it's centered around 7 major topics: geography, population and migration, cultural patterns and processes, political organization of space, agriculture, food production and rural land use, industrialization and economic development, cities and urban land use.
It looked interesting.
So Jen, can I ask a question? I think you said if we were to continue with AP World History, there would have to be a prerequisite that would be new.
That would be.
So then, no comprehensive world history course that would be offered then?
Well, we
The
study
ninth
world
grade course.
history in earlier grades.
So the 9th grade course.
Michael, and I'm going by what he shared with the curriculum committee that day, he felt that the curriculum that students experienced in 9th grade social studies was so aligned with what AP World History presented them with, that was why many were not interested in continuing that study, because they felt that it was a repetition of what they had already, though not at an AP level, certainly.
So there was very little
Because I
interest.
remember at the meeting, it was very low.
The numbers of
Yeah.
students,
Yeah.
I think it was on, what, 15
Yeah.
or 17.
Yeah, like 9 students, 15
Yeah.
students, 17, 9, 14, 17.
Yeah.
And they started with 2013, they added that class.
In world history.
In AP.
In the AP.
Yeah. That's migration. Human migration.
There you go, out of that class into the other class.
Okay with that topic? Which one is?
I'm struggling a little bit with it. I'm trying to think if there's a political overreach with this. If we're looking, if that's where this is heading, I'm a little skeptical, so please excuse my. Just wondering if there's underlying reason why this is being changed, other than with the Frenchman chair. Is that the only?
Yeah, that was, you know.
You mean
But
what
then
they
the
said,
curriculum, we look at who's signing up for what, and when the courses are very low, we question the viability of them. That's typical from.
And I think
I
change.
my concern of the process is I don't know what the options were. And we've gone with a relatively new AP course that is soft around the edges, right? So, I mean, I'd just like to know what the options were.
Can I think maybe Greg, you're questioning when one of the topics covered was the political education, am I right? So I'm thinking, when I was there, I was interpreting it as society and how they built their society, and not politics, but how they went about organizing themselves in relation to other societies and other different ethnicities. So that was the political piece to it.
Is that what you were referring to?
I'm thinking, I don't know.
Well, I can't tell you what I'm referring to because I don't know enough about it to say. I'm just a little,
I didn't get the political question. Politics in the course, or politics about picking the course?
politics within the course.
Oh,
Is it a course set up so that we can impose a certain political
No.
perspective or view
No.
of the world, the country, whatever?
That is not how the textbooks that were shared seemed, I thought, to the group.
It's more like human migration and why
Yeah.
people moved where they did and stayed there or didn't stay there, or what were the resources.
And I also think that the human geography, that we were like blown away by the title, and then you have, different sub.
Yeah, the title doesn't match the course at
I
all.
went through the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Greg, we did ask the question about the mapping to college, and they were going to look into that for us. But we have that issue too with the computer principal, where there's no direct mapping to colleges yet, so it's a new class. At some point, they will map. Sometimes they don't when they start off with a class. They don't have something at the college that they can directly map to. You know what I mean by that? Somebody makes a 4 or 5, and if there's something at the college level that they will get credit for. So they will look into that one as well. But that's just like computer principal, which is a new one too.
So Jamie, you mentioned that you felt as though this was more of a sociology type course. I mean, is there any concern that this is diluting our social studies or our history curriculum by moving in this direction of more sociology?
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong personally with the study of sociology.
I don't either.
I think there's something wrong with
Diluting-
having a course that no one's taking. I mean, that's the bottom line here. If the kids aren't signing up for that for a reason.
I think it's a
can we offer
relatively
them-
hard AP class.
Also, it's an infusion.
I mean, and that's just reality of it.
Well, let me just
Doesn't mean
read
the
this
numbers
one
don't matter,
statement
it just
that Mike
makes sense.
They
Telly.
do matter though.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I
economically they matter, right?
Yeah, I'd like to just read this one statement that Mike Telly put on his paper. He said that AP Human Geography is a course which combines human socioeconomics and geography to examine how landscape impacts how people live around the world. I mean, also, we all, the whole migration patterns, how we came from wherever and migrated all over, and how all the impacts, the environmental impacts impacted everybody, and the bottom line is that there was not, he also wrote that AP World History was first offered in 2013-14 school year to 10th through 12th grades, who completed the freshman core world history course. Since then, the AP course has had low enrollment between 9 and 17 students. Although student scores on the tests have been consistently above 3, the low enrollment is largely due to AP World History covering much of the same content that is covered in the freshman world history course.
If the board's not comfortable, we can table this. There's no reason for you to do it.
Are you concerned that the AP class is too hard, and that's why?
No, actually, our performance in that class is the 6th highest out of 23 of the AP courses that we offer.
But remember that
again, my just interest is to understand what the options were, not that, hey, we should consider a low enrollment course to be swapped out for something. But we're swapping out the 6th highest performing AP course that we offer for something that's 4 years old that is sort of like a little squishy. So I'd love to have known what the options were.
But remember they're changing that, Greg, so the class, what we see here, where you made 93, the 93 that we have here is not going to be the same class next year. It's going to be a different one. And also the students, before they can take this, they have to take this other class that we have to pay for them to take, and it's not even an AP class.
You can't even think about the pay for or your scores either. I know that everybody wants scores and whatever, but we also need to look at, the core curriculum standards, what, and how do we meet those curriculum standards also? You know, and we are aligned with what is going on in New Jersey. And also, you know, let's challenge the kids. I mean, the kids are saying that, you know, a lot of this we already covered. Well, yeah, I'm going to get an A on this, might as well take it. I mean, sure, fine, but now we have an opportunity to enrich that curriculum with much more. It's just a more intensive study of basically the world and geography and human behavior.
So Tim, if I understand correctly, you just wondered if there were other options to pursue?
Well, it was reported that there were. It was reported that there was a survey done that included multiple options, of which this was the top selection. So I was curious as to, A, what the options were, B, what the survey process was.
Right.
And other questions, but, you know, I mean, we've talked about it enough, I think.
Well, we can table it. If you want to make a motion to table it, you can table it. It's not terrible, no. You want to find out more? It's no problem.
All right, I'll make a motion to table it.
Do you have a second on that?
So I have some other questions about curriculum, sorry about that. First of all, do we have to vote on that?
Yeah. Yes.
Or at the end?
Go ahead.
We could do it now.
Yeah.
Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. DeGiacchino.
Yes.
Mrs. Hockey.
No.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro.
Yes.
Mrs. Tover.
Yes.
Ms. Virtue.
Yes.
Ms. Birch.
No.
Mrs. Lees. Yes.
So it's yes.
It's tabled. I just want to make the observation, the Madrigal's White House trip is an unbelievably special event for those students. I've been to that event before, and they're in the foyer of the White House, right outside of the Oval Office, effectively. And it's a spectacular event, and Mr. LaPointe, just deserves so much credit for making those kinds of things happen, because that's going to be a once in a lifetime experience for those children. And it's really, it's amazing. And I'd hope that would, where's Jake? There he is. That's a neat one, Jake. I think you should take a look at it. Overnight trips on the middle school, was that discussed?
Well, that's on another committee.
Oh, that was policy.
Talk about
Okay.
that on the next report.
Okay, excellent.
Can I ask a question? Of course. Can you just talk a little bit more? What are the scholarships and, well, really the scholarships with regards to the Project Lead the Way program? I'm just curious as to what that is, and actually what the testing is.
Yeah, so there are many, it's pages and pages that Grant shared with us. And I can share the details with you from some point, Heather, if you want to see the details. But many, many colleges had an opportunity, if you took various combinations of Project Lead the Way courses, you could apply for scholarships, or you could apply for advancement and credit. And each college had something different, and it was multiple pages of these different ones.
It was not all money. It
Wasn't all money, it was advancement.
And there were preferred admittance, I believe, into certain projects, into certain programs.
Into engineering programs.
Yeah.
And then the testing, I'm assuming, would give them an advanced
So some of them
placement.
required being able to take and pass the Project Lead the Way test. Some of them did not require that. As long as you took the course, then you could apply for the scholarship. But there were many, many opportunities, so at the end of the year, students can take a look at these, and if those are the colleges they're interested in, they could have an opportunity at that school. That's great.
And the teacher or guidance will help them kind of work that out.
That was part of the training that the teacher attended this summer, went to 10 days. One teacher in particular has been interested in furthering this program.
That's a great opportunity. And then I just wanted to ask about the journalism. So is that taken then as part of, like, as an elective program? Or, that seems like a great option.
And Susan felt strongly that students who wanted to continue in it, that if they were in it for 4 years, they should have that honors recognition for that 4th year of study, and that
it kind of gave students an opportunity to grow into it in ways that maybe the current offering did not.
And she also talked about how the production of the yearbook is incredible effort, and it's very professional what they do, and there's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of work, and they don't get any credit for it. So, this way, it can give that fourth year of something. Right, and they're actually responsible for doing that, and they're gonna get credit for it. Great. Makes sense.
It's award-winning. It's award-winning, it's spectacular.
Any other questions? Yes, everything else. Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Giuliano?
Yes.
Mrs. Hockey? We're voting on the rest of the curriculum.
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
No.
We didn't move, no.
Janice.
Did we move the motion first? Yeah, we did.
Janice made the
That's
motion
how we
and
opened
Mindy
it up.
seconded. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then we did a side motion for the other.
Motion.
So, yes, we're back on the
Okay.
original motion, yes. Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tover?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees? Yes. Okay.
Can I make a suggestion? I'd like to say something. No, you can't. Well, I just wanted to make a suggestion that maybe someone could give us a presentation.
Yeah, next time.
Next time, this way.
Absolutely.
It doesn't come
Absolutely.
from the mouth of the-
And he can answer all of the questions around the survey and what the other options were, and, yeah. We do have to be aware of the fact that the high school has to commit to their program of studies at some point, so I think we should be prepared to make a decision at the next one. So that's next month. Yes.
And understand that a lot of
Could we
work
get some
went into
information ahead of time?
this also.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Policy committee?
No, it's facilities.
No, policies. Policies, yeah.
Good break.
You're right after. F&O met last week on the 7th, met for the length of the meeting, now about an hour and a half. Bob, Heather, Santoro, Jamie, myself were in attendance, in addition Jen Schaffler, Gretchen, and Heather Gogan. Doug Lucas was there, and Bill, the architect, was there as well. We need Bill there to discuss one of the agenda items. First up was Jen presented the information on the security cameras, the installation of the cabling, October 31st through November 9th, the installation of the cabling need for the Phase 1 cameras. The installation was going to be between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. Middle school and the elementary school are scheduled for installation first. VHS will follow. The installation and configuration of the security cameras and security servers in each building was discussed 11/26 through December 7th, formal training on the Avalon system.
Vigilon. Between three of us.
And then the dates and times change. I think we're pretty much on track with all that, Jen, right? So appreciate Jen reporting out on that for us. Student access update, a lengthy conversation was had by all. The discussion of a letter from the planning board attorney, copy to the Board of Ed, and sent to the attorney for the Burnsville Center. We had a discussion on the storage pod that was on the property in the back and the dumpsters in the back, and I believe those are all removed now. That's just learned that this evening. We discussed the idea of getting a stop sign in the back to create a safer area when the students are crossing, going from the walkway to the Burnsville Center. There is discussion if we're unable to access the Burnsville Center property to construct the walkway. We may have to build it in a way to stay on our own property. Consensus was that we would prefer to build the project as it has been planned and approved. It's going to involve additional communication with our attorneys, the planning board representatives, planning board and the representatives from the Burnsville Center. The third item on the agenda was transportation, buying the 24-passenger bus, the 5-year lease. Bob, I think, discussed that in finance because that was discussed yesterday in finance, and we gave you all the information that we need. But we do have most of the bells and whistles on that bus that we need, including a GPS, backup cameras, 3-point seatbelt. We have the delivery date at the beginning of January 2019. And we discussed the salary for the bus drivers, which was then formalized in finance just yesterday. So the other item that's been added to the agenda tonight, item number 2, that we will be rejecting all of the bids for the middle school recess area in the second item agenda, which is on the addendum this evening. And with that, make a motion that we approve action items numbers 1 and 2. Who's on the agenda?
Question. I'm a tad bit confused now, because I know, so you're saying that the original plan that we had to access the center, we're going to go back to that? I thought that condition, I'm confused.
Well,
What's going on?
the consensus in FNO is to focus on proceeding with that original plan. In order to do that plan, we need access to the Burnsville Center's property to do that. And at this point in time, we are still in the process of negotiating that. And there's been some issues that are delaying that, and we're having Sherry and our board attorneys in discussions with the attorneys and people from the Burnsville Center to make all that happen.
Is it more positive now? It's good?
Well, we have the support of the planning board. Yes, we have the support of the planning board, and the request has been made to them to, or will be made when that letter is drafted, to help us to navigate that, because in a perfect world, the feeling is that we would like to move forward with that the way it was originally envisioned.
Okay.
But you have to get equipment. You can't do it all on 8 feet. So
The planning board gave their approval. There was some relief that was given to Burnsville Center with the idea of what we're doing, specifically 2 spaces where the crosswalk exists, so that there's a line of sight when you're crossing. There's a lot of little technicalities that have to be ironed out, so we're not getting a whole lot of specifics. We're working on that. That's why the discussion of the stop sign to make that even safer.
So that's what I thought it was an insurance thing and all that.
So that conversation is ongoing, but the planning board has definitely come out to say that they would like us to work it out, and they believe that there was an understanding on the part of the center that would enable us to do what we would like to do.
Okay.
The important thing in that document, where I read it carefully again the other night, which is pretty amazing. They gave them, if I can explain this, they gave them a design waiver. The parking lot, if you build a parking lot, you can't put it right on the property line on your neighbor. If I wanted to build a parking lot, my driveway right, I can't do that. So they gave them a waiver because the parking lot, if we built the sidewalk, like the plans on, and the fence, they can be parking with no clearance. So that was the design waiver. So now, that's in the letter, telling them that they gave that to them based on this walkway that we built. That is huge. Just so everybody understands that. So they'd have to ask, technically, the planning board said, if you don't agree, we're going to make you go back and ask for approval. That's the way I read it. If you take that letter out and reread it, it's,
It just seems like they're being obstructionists. I mean, when you look at the pattern for the crossing for the students from what is currently proposed to what we proposed, you are crossing in front of the same traffic, literally the same traffic pattern, maybe 100 feet further down.
Right. All it takes
So there's
is
no
a sign.
logic to it. I think it's just being obstructionist and certainly not being a good neighbor or a good member of the community and potentially providing, abiding by the letter of the planning committee's, waivers. So I think it's terribly unfortunate that they act that way.
Well, we're proud of the board and happy with what we're doing. We are pursuing it. We're doing everything we can because
Speaking of motions,
this design is very safe. It's I think the addition of the stop sign, we plan on having cameras there. There are cameras from the Burnsville Center. There's lighting back there. We've thought of everything we can. Obviously, if I think of anything else, we'd add it in, but I think it's been set up to be as safe as it can, because it is behind the center, to the side of the center, but it's, we've tried to factor in everything we can to make it as, feeling as it can be. I still believe it's going to be a win-win for everybody in the end, so.
It's also handicap accessible. I don't know if you put that in, which is a huge benefit of the original plan that we are trying to go through.
Yeah, there's the steps that are coming down because in the world of students, I get this, and we were all there, and I'm still amazed at how students can access different things regardless of what's in the way, but the shortest distance, as a full graph teacher, between 2 points is a straight line. We have that straight line with the steps coming down, but there is, to Heather's point, a access for handicap if you just continue down that outfield to the softball area, and then those trees are going to come down. There's going to be a concrete area, so there's going to be ability for handicap accessibility for that walkway as well. So there's going to be steps there, but it's also going to be handicap accessible, and also for snow removal machines, et cetera. Anything that has to get in there can easily get in there. So.
Okay, all right, ready?
motions.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. DeGiorgino?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoppy?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lees? Yes. Okay.
Now, policy.
Yeah.
Okay, policy met on November 7th, and the first topic we discussed was our homework regulation. This regulation is quite lengthy and detailed. Colleen Butler led the discussion about the amount of homework assigned and the possibility that it could be overwhelming and excessive in conjunction with many after-school activities. Going forward, we need to look at some of the language in the regulation, the amount of time spent on completion of the homework assignment, the value of it, and what we are trying to achieve. So we'll be looking into that in the future. Secondly, the committee thinks it would be beneficial to adopt a bed bug policy and regulation in order to guide the district's response to any future bed bug incidents. Okay, the next thing we talked about was Strauss Esme Associates. This is a school, I'm sorry, Strauss Esme Associates is a school policy and regulation consulting service. They keep SHSD and numerous other districts up to date regarding new or changing laws, policies, and/or regulations. In November, there will be a first reading for any mandated policies or previously adopted policies that should have been updated. There will be a second reading and adoption for policies/regulations, and they would be Regulation 5430, Policy 5440, and Regulation 5440. It's in our packet. Old business and still in progress, activity fee policy. There are discrepancies in the implementation of the activity fee policy across the buildings. We will have proposed changes in the next month or two. Next, we talked about topics that were suggested from October minutes. We did not yet receive the new policies regarding mandated changes for transgender students and non-con. Next, we are reviewing the Booster Club Policy 9191. Presently, there is no regulation for this policy. We were asked to look into our overnight field trip policy, and after discussion, the policy committee is not recommending any changes. Let's see. Then the committee, we talked about the exchange student policy, and the committee will look into this policy in the future. So I'd like to move items 1 and 2 on the agenda. And, yeah.
It's just a quick question, because I have looked at the bed bug too. So is that a Strauss Esme? Is there like a standard bed bug policy?
Yes, so we use Strauss Esme to manage all of our policies and regulations, and the reason this list is longer than it might normally be is that they did an audit for us of our policies in getting ready for CUSAC to be sure that anything that was mandated was up to date and anything that we had implemented, but we might not have the latest version, we wanted to be sure. All of the policies and regulations that are in the first reading tonight came out of that audit, with the exception of 7424, which was the bed bug policy and regulation. It is their standard template for that, but we had never implemented it before, and we thought that it made sense to do so. Not because anybody knows of any bed bugs in the Somerset Hills School District at the moment.
The first thing that we do is the policy,
Again, there are no bed bugs right now.
Yes, I want to report that much. No, I just have a comment with respect to the overnight policy, which is near and dear to my heart, as it relates to proposed overnight trip to Washington, D.C. for the middle school for 8th grade. So I want to just make sort of 2 points. Number one is, for middle schools all across this country, going to Washington, D.C. is like a seminal experience for middle school students, and it's one that we are denying our children. Second is, our neighbors in Bedminster will be joining our 8th graders at the high school, having spent 3 days in D.C. on an overnight trip, as the capstone to their 8th grade experience. So I would encourage us to reach out to our friends in Bedminster and ask them how they make that work, okay? Because they make it work, and we're not making it work. And I think it's really terribly unfortunate that we're denying our children an experience that middle school children all over this country get. So I would just encourage us to go out, talk to our friends in Bedminster, and see how they make it work.
Okay, you used to do it. I mean, they used to meet in Washington. I think 2013 is when that was your last time?
I don't think we're denying them the experience.
We're denying.
Overnight, basically.
Well,
They
yes.
do go, and they do make a very good day out of it.
Well, they don't go. No, there is no DC.
They're in New York City.
There is no DC.
There's no DC.
No. And a
We
10-hour
said
bus ride
That they
round
could,
trip is-
there was debate around, would that be possible to do in a day?
In a day.
Yeah, we talked about.
And it could be done in a day.
I mean, it's a long day, but a lot of schools do it.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting is that we reach out to Bedminster. We have a newfound warm and cozy relationship with Bedminster. So perhaps we could do a little sort of sharing of knowledge and experience as to how they make that work.
We can do that. And just for the record, we absolutely found value in the trip to DC. We discussed that a lot. And we also discussed how, looking back at field trips that we had taken, what certain ones had such a great impact on us. So we totally understand what you're saying.
And we did talk about really Gretchen working with her staff to take a look to make sure that we are providing the most meaningful field trips that are tied to our curriculum and will provide, an additional learning experience for our kids. So, we've discussed, we're discussing.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I mean, this is one where, again, I'm not saying we're the outlier, but it's a mainstream experience for middle school students all over this country, and it's a core experience for our neighbors in Bedminster.
It is a big issue. You don't do the Stokes trip in 6th grade? Sleep over?
Our policy currently says no overnight trips, K-8.
And it all changed in 2013.
I think it was a post-September 11th
Okay.
decision.
I know it's a great experience, both of those, our kids really, and they learn a lot. And they
We're
get-
meeting with Jennifer soon, so we can talk about that.
Question. The honoring pupil achievement, has anything been discussed regarding the SOR-82 graduation, the tradition of announcing the top 20 students in the class? Last year was top 25. Next year, maybe it's top 30 or top 50. I don't know what it'll end up being, but I've always been against that tradition. My understanding is that tradition started with a high school principal years ago. My early tenure on this board, I remember talking about that. I haven't brought it up in a while, but I will bring it up again. We could look into that. We have an outstanding senior awards night where we honor our top. I'm always impressed with the talent that we have in this district, the awards they get, where the students are going to school, et cetera, and I could never understand, get my hands around why we can't honor the top 20 academic students of the class at that senior awards night. We do it at graduation, when graduation is in effect a night for all students to come together. We do have the long-standing tradition, of course, as all schools do, with the salutatorian, valedictorian, and salutatorian. I get the fact that it's a tradition, but without getting into any details and comparisons, a lot of traditions this country has had since the birth in 1776 have gone by the wayside because they don't fit in. And so traditions can be broken. So I would just like to see us look into that. I think it's just outdated. It's not the time and place for that. It's time and place is that senior awards night, which does a great service to our young men.
I can have that conversation with Scott certainly, but that is not something that I believe is covered by your policy or your regulation. I think, as you noted, that is a tradition more than something that is dictated, and not what, definitely not stipulated in these policies and regulations that are in their second reading. They were more around ensuring that the timing of his calculations for
for the valedictorian and salutatorian were done in a manner to give him enough time to be ready for the graduation
If
celebration.
it can be discussed, it's not, you know, I spoke out and tried to have this change because I do feel again, it's just not the time and place. We want to honor all of our students at graduation. If we can have that discussion again, maybe this board will feel differently than boards in the past have felt, but.
Can we discuss?
Thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino?
Yes.
Mrs. Habi? Yes. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Rochu?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes. Okay. Personnel. We met on the 6th, personnel group, and we discussed the bus driver salaries, which has been discussed in our 2 other committees, so that got a lot of discussion over the last week. And that is on the agenda tonight for us to vote on, raising up the bus drivers, which we heard about from Barb. We also discussed the need for replacing an evening custodian who retired a couple years ago. I believe he was at Bedwell and the middle school.
Yep, shared between those two.
Right, and that person was never replaced, so we discussed that. We also talked about the school calendar moving forward. We just discussed it. And we can change the start date of school, we can start earlier, which is what's been going on around the country. But that requires a lot more discussion, and we thought maybe it might be a good idea to survey the administration to see what they would like to have or like to see, and then talk about it some more. So that's just a matter of discussion. We reviewed job descriptions for 3 positions in the business office, and that is on the agenda. And I want to point out, well, I'm going to move items 1 through 9, and then on the addendum, items 10 through 15, and I want to point out that we are voting on the bus driver pay, which is number 15, and in item 10 on the addendum, under the Bedwell nurse part-time, the effective date should be December 12th, 2018, not 2019. And could I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay, so the calendar, you're just talking about.
Just talking about it.
Okay, there's no, I don't think that comes from the calendar.
No, we just talked about it.
Because I know that's one of the things that.
Yeah, we want to make sure we coordinate.
Oh, yes, and then it's like,
Yeah.
nothing.
And I don't think we just changed that time.
Yeah, that's, yeah, a lot of work.
Yes.
Okay? All right, Coach?
We do coordinate with Bedminster.
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. DiGiacchino? Mrs. Habi?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Ms. Virtue?
Yes.
Ms. Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes. Happy Community Relations?
Right, the Community Relations Committee met on Monday, November 12th, and we had some great discussions, which lasted almost 2 hours. So I apologize in advance, the report might be a little bit longer than usual. All the committee members were in attendance, those being Greg, Janice, Heather, and Dr. Dempsey and myself. Our first agenda item was a report out of information surrounding student learning experiences, which are often referred to as SLEs. Information around this was obtained from the New Jersey School Boards Convention, where I attended 3 courses on this specific topic. And I was really so inspired by what I learned that I really felt it was important to share it with my colleagues on the committee, because I saw a direct tie with the strategic plan as well, and as well as the partnership focus of this committee. So the 3 sessions I attended were Gateway to Careers, which was presented by the Gateway Regional School District. Strengthening career readiness through quality internships presented by the New Jersey Department of Education, and career programs for future-ready schools presented by Northern Valley Regional High School. Again, as I said, being that the primary focus of the Community Relations Committee's partnerships, I really felt that there was a direct tie. So for starters, I didn't realize this, but the New Jersey Department of Education actually has a code related to starting an SLE program for schools. Essentially, this code outlines the 4 phases of this type of program, which starts with an awareness, moves into exploration, preparation, and job training. Within the code, there are also, it describes variations of the different types of SLE opportunities a district can allow, such as job shadows, school-based enterprises, which could be a school store, bank, culinary venue, or even a flower shop. It allows for volunteering, internships, and apprenticeships. Then I went to this Gateway Regional High School presentation, and Gateway is a district down in South Jersey, and they've instituted a career education program starting in grade 7, going all the way up through senior year in high school. It starts in 7th grade with the concept of career exploration through a bank of speakers that the 7th graders are exposed to. It then moves into an 8th grade career day. In 9th grade, and I thought this was really interesting, they actually offer a course around basic job skills, so teaching students about letter writing, handshakes, eye contact, the use of LinkedIn, etc. Those kind of skills that you need when you want to go out and find a job. They also tie their series of field trips to opportunities surrounding different targeted careers. Then in 10th grade, students are offered job shadows if they desire, and then it's wrapped up with internships in grades 11 and 12. And then the last session I attended was by Northern Valley Regional High School, which has received a Silver Status Award for their work around being a future-ready school. They shared a lot about their future-ready framework, which is based on student-driven learning and authentic learning. They too offer an SLE program, but it's actually more student-driven, where students are responsible for finding their own opportunities. And they call it their senior capstone project. One of the other things that Northern Valley talked about was their 3 CTE tracks, and CTE stands for Career and Technical Education. These tracks have a lot of interesting elements, including students to VOTEC opportunities, as well as allowing students to get college credits for courses taken in high school through partnerships that they have with certain higher education institutions. So at the end of my debrief with the Community Relations Committee, we had a lot of great discussion, and the committee agreed that we would perhaps visit a school or two that has developed this type of program in order to learn more about what they're doing, how they developed it, how it's benefiting their students, and to see if it is something that might be worth further exploration for our district. Then our second agenda item surround an update from Dr. Dempsey around 3 opportunities that our district will soon apply for. The first is with Sanofi, which is a pharmaceutical company located in Bridgewater. The opportunity would be for 2 students to attend a science program around STEM careers and a lab hybrid. The second is a camp at Stockton University through a partnership with AAUW, is that right? For a truck camp. And the last is a partnership with United Way Peace for a mini grant surrounding partnering education and community engagement. Our third agenda item was a follow-up from the October meeting, which is the development of an evaluation checklist for ideas brought to the committee. So during our meeting, the committee brainstormed with coming up with about 6 or 7 criteria, including benefits to students, resources, timelines, etc., that we will put into a formalized evaluation checklist. And our hope is that once we have this checklist finalized, hopefully at our meeting next month, this is what we can use to evaluate all ideas that come into our committee. Our fourth item was a discussion around ways to ensure the viability of the Community Friday folder going forward. And we came up with a proposed solution that Dr. Dempsey is going to vet with her administration team. And then lastly, we agreed that our next meeting, we would spend some time discussing the community service program that we have within the district. as Heather attended a session at school boards, which inspired her, and she wants to share elements of that program with us to see if something similar is possible within the district. So again, apologies for the lengthy update, but we really did have a great discussion. And no actions to move at this time. Thank you.
Discussion?
That's great.
Questions? Okay, I'm just going to jump on the discussion about the school board. We did have 7 of us who attended the school board convention, which was a high number for our group, and it was a really good opportunity to learn new ideas, get some information, meet board members from other districts, and spend some time together. So it was very fruitful. Okay. We have an opportunity now for public questions and comments on any item.
I beat you. Sorry, I gotta set it up in selfie mode. Sorry, I just want to speak on 2 things just because they popped up. I'm John Semino. I teach here at the high school. I coach here and at the middle school. One thing that popped up was inclusion. I just didn't want anybody in this room to think that was an area in sports or extracurriculars that needed anything. My entire time here, it has been amazing. From the student athletes to the coaches to everyone else, they do an amazing job. Obviously, I can't talk about particulars, but I can tell you now from being in the building, it is at an all-time high right now. It has never been better. If you guys, you just can't talk about it, obviously, for obvious reasons, but it is absolutely amazing. It is one of my biggest sources of pride here in being a teacher and a coach. That's obviously all I can say about it, but I just didn't want anybody here to think that it was an area of need.
And I so appreciate that. I think that, it was on the list of things that came out of the strategic plan as something that warranted perhaps exploration. And everything that I looked at and people that I talked to would indicate exactly what you're saying.
Are you talking about the drug policy?
No.
No, yes, that's what I obviously, you can only talk about it in certain ways in a public forum, but guys, my kids come here, and that is one of the driving reasons why my son and daughter will come to this school, is because of that. Way beyond academics or anything else here.
I met with Teresa Blatt.
Yes.
And just after our curriculum meeting and policy letter. And she was beyond thrilled about how students are so accepted and how many participate in so many co-curricular activities.
Yeah, I just didn't want one person in this room.
Blown away by it.
And I apologize if that was the impression that I left anybody.
No, it wasn't anybody's. I heard it, and I thought maybe it had come up as an area of concern, so on the thing. I just didn't want anybody to have that thought
But I think you
process.
should know what she is saying, being that.
We all feel it here at the high school.
Everybody.
It's absolutely amazing. And it's not teacher-driven, it's not coach-driven, it's not director-driven, it's student-driven by the students in the school. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, because it's in a program that I'm involved in a baseball program, but is the canning thing. Obviously, I'm not at every canning event. I've coached multiple sports and done multiple co-curriculars. Your impression of it is I'm closer to what my son does for his 4-year-old T-ball team. When the times I've been there, in a boys program, football has done it in the past, baseball does currently do it. They're not panhandling. They're not just standing there. I can't speak for every student, but I can tell you that, one, they're quite often asking can I carry your groceries to your car? Can I help you load those up? That's something that's done. If they're not doing that, they're inviting you to a game. Say, hey, come watch us on this day. Come check us out. Hey, our pink out is this day. Hey, this fundraiser is that day. It's not, obviously, I can't speak about every event, but that's one of, that's how it is handled here at any of the times I've actually been there to supervise it. And anybody that knows a 15 to 18-year-old boy, getting them to talk to adults out of the blue and approach them is something of value. And again, making that connection from sports teams, which, to the community, it's big. Inviting them to come watch, having a conversation with them, seeing them there. Now, so I could say, if you guys wanted to provide guidelines for that, that would be great. So that it is, because obviously, as a coach, I wouldn't want my student athletes panhandling for a change either. But I would be very careful in striking it down. And you guys had mentioned things like a baked goods. You can't do that. That's an board policy. We cannot sell baked goods.
Can I ask, is it a booster club initiative?
Well, the general booster club is fairly non-existent. All booster, every sport is kind of up on their own. Every co-curricular is up on their own at this point. And we've changed a lot of things for good reasons with fundraising. But striking one down now, 3 months before a season starts, puts a crunch on somebody, on a team. On maybe, a baseball team in particular, hoping to travel to Florida, or participate in many of the fundraisers they do for great reasons. So I just, I understand where your impression comes from. When I take my son for T-ball canning, that's what he does. He puts on his uniform and he just holds the thing out there. But that is not the way it's done, again, in my experience here. I can't speak for everyone. That's not how it is. I think it's a good thing. In the way you guys explained it, yes, obviously that's a bad thing. We wouldn't want
There's a lack of, we didn't have that information.
Yeah, well, here's the reason why. It's been approved for years. The baseball program has done this for a while. You probably had to stand out there and watch it. So it's been approved for years, so we've never thought of having to explain what it is. Obviously, look, a set of guidelines. Yes, it is. So that's why I felt like, obviously I couldn't speak earlier. I had to wait.
Can we tune into something all the time at ShopRite up in Chester? There's teams there, bad.
Yes.
Right? And they have their containers and it says on the container what it's for. So if we could maybe have a dialogue about turning it into something such as that.
That's more on the particular ShopRite. Than is on some places I shouldn't say just ShopRite, but stores. Some places will allow people to come in and bag and some won't. Some say, you gotta stay outside. When we're outside, if we can offer, hey, can we carry that to your car? No big problem. Hey, make sure you come, hey, we're playing Saturday, we're playing Ridge, come check us out. That's more along the lines of what it is in my experience. So, like I said, offering guidelines are awesome. Striking something down, I know it feels like spring is a mile away and we're talking about snow tomorrow, but, yeah, it's.
Well, could we have?
We voted to take it off, so it would have to go on, back on next month.
It's just like I said.
We can talk about alternatives, I think, and maybe, certainly if the consensus is that there's a middle ground.
I'm sure there is. Like I said, I think guidelines would be awesome. Asking for that to not happen. We have guidelines in all our fundraisers, and that's fine. But I said, I felt like I had to speak up for it just because I've been to both sides of it. So I will continue unfortunately, my 4-year-old T-ball canning, but it's just not how it's done here. It's definitely not how it's done. I've seen it done at the baseball program.
So if we do go forward with something like this, then your idea about guidelines is good, but I think there has to be an educational component to teach the kids, because I honestly have been to places where it's just, there is no dialogue. And so maybe teaching kids how to go about initiating a conversation.
Well, that's what's done now. Again, I can't speak for everyone and every fundraiser, and every kid is different.
Right, and that's why we are having this discussion. So when you bring up the point about how you can bring all these other ideas and conversations into the mix, that puts a different light on everything.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I just want to say. Like I said, it's just, with a crunch in time and budget's tight and everything else, I just wanted to bring that up so that if you can do that next meeting, that's awesome, just because, well, spring training's not that far away, right? All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hi everyone, Sarah Falzarano, head field hockey coach again. I'm going on John's coattails. With the Canning, our team for field hockey does not do it. We do other fundraisers, but what I am afraid of is that I totally agree with the fact that students need to get something out of fundraising, right? However, what was just approved was the fundraiser for Claremont Tavern. No students are involved in that. So that was approved, right? What are students doing? I challenge you to tell me. Nothing. So, that being said, I'm also shooting myself in the foot because we rely so much as coaches, so much on fundraising. I can't run my field hockey program without it. I cannot. As a teacher, coaching is secondary. As a coach, being a fundraising coordinator is most definitely secondary. I don't have the knowledge. I rely on parents to help me out to run fundraisers. And we rely on the Booster Club to send, we on our team send kids to camp that can't afford it. We buy spiritware like this for kids that can't afford it. We pay for specialty coaches and programs that aren't covered by the Board of Education. The Booster Club pays for portions of coaching clinics and professional development. Some teams, baseball takes trips. We buy championship t-shirts. I really think with Booster Club money, I really think we need backpack and titles. Setting school records this year. Our program was outstanding. I think the girls should get a t-shirt for it. As for Canning, house is different than Penny Wars at Bedwell. When kids bring in money, put it in a can, how is it different? So I could go out with the baseball team in front of ShopRite and have 2 cans and say, okay, what do you want? What do you want? Field hockey, baseball, right? It's a very similar concept. Canning gets the rest of the community involved. I'm not sure how many people in here, minus my Bedwell friends who I don't shut up about field hockey, sorry, know that we had 23 wins this year. We were 23-1. That's a school record by 4 wins. Those are things that Canning gets students to do. It gets them to initiate that conversation. And as a mom in the community, I can take my 8-year-old and 11-year-old and we do it at Chester ShopRite when they do Canning. And the lesson of students working for their money, right? So the lesson that you were all talking about, that you were talking about of fundraisers, you should work for that money. But as a mom, how about the lesson of giving without receiving? That my daughter, their son can put $5 in the can and not have to get a tangible item back. That's also a lesson on the community end of it. Because honestly, as a mom, I'd rather give $5 than have to ask, than have to get Yankee candles again, Christmas trees again. Okay, I really don't need another car wash again. Sometimes just giving is a little better, and I know a lot of people in the community feel that way. And I have one more point and now it's gone. But maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot, but I do agree with John with there needs to be some different. Maybe does need to be some guidelines because we rely so heavily on this money. We rely so heavily. I cannot run a program without it. I can't run my program without it. It's just not in my copy's budget, and that's a whole other conversation. That's not his fault. But we either have to get creative with more ways, and there's so many great fundraisers that I have ideas for, but the 7th grade class does that, so I can't do that one. So we are running out of ideas, or the 4th graders do that, or somebody else does this. I can't do a pie sale because there's already a pie sale. I can't do a car wash, there's already a car wash. Maybe we need to have a whole new conversation with the Booster Club, with you, with what's left of the Booster Club, really, in regard to fundraising, because I think Canning is an amazing opportunity.
Coaches give so much of their time and so much of their effort, and fundraising is really like not your job description. I'd just be curious as to understand more the budget for the programs, the amount of money that's raised externally, the mechanisms through which it's raised, and the uses of those monies. I don't know if we have done that kind of analysis, but it would be helpful because the starting point is like, look, if there's money that's needed for a program, that's sort of the responsibility of the board. And we have oversight of that, and we have control mechanisms around that. So I would like to know, as we have this conversation, like a full survey of what's our budget, what are we raising outside, how are we doing it, and how are we spending it?
When we need it.
Well, a lot of the different sports, Booster Club, they're actually under this umbrella, and their funds are actually managed by the Booster Club, and they have to tell when they deposit money, when they spend money. The Booster Club, they actually keep track of that too, because they have to let them know. So even though they're out there fundraising separate, I did this because of my son was in fencing, they're out there fundraising separately, the money still goes under one big umbrella under the Booster Club, and we still have to tell whenever we spend anything, because they write the checks, and they send the checks to whoever is spending, and they still have, and I actually should send when I was doing it for my son, the fencing group, I would send our budget, so a lot of them actually do have that already. So you're saying that as the board, we want to start.
Well, I think
looking at-
that's part of the policy that we started to sort of look at, is what does that look like?
Because the school does not,
Administer it
and
at all,
they don't have,
privately, yes.
they don't have enough money.
I mean, I think Tim makes a good point. If people knew what the budget was for each sport, and people understood why they do need to fundraise, your minds would be blown. Because we have in this small little school the same amount of sports and activities that a larger school has. And the budget, which is aligned for our sports, is considerably less. So, and the amount of reliance that they need for the support of the community and the parents and the Booster Club is enormous.
And
You
the
know,
parents-
and I may be speaking out of turn. I know I voted the canning thing down, it was just like in my head, like I just, but we didn't, you know, give us the guidelines and we're good to go, you know,
And that's
like,
also what I was
don't want to
saying.
take away.
Totally agree, and,
You know,
and maybe that's not the right avenue, but my other point also was, at least on my team, and I know other coaches struggle with it, the parents end up writing the checks, right? So as a parent of a baseball player, or a football player, or a field hockey player, field hockey's doing the Yankee candle sale, okay, parents here, just here, so really, they're paying for their kids to be on the team. Yes, they should go to their grandparents and their aunts and their uncles and their teachers, and we, of course, encourage them to do that. We don't encourage door-to-door sales, but go to your teachers, sucker, you know, it's the beginning of the year, sucker them in, come on, you know? But it's hard, you know, that, again, encourages the face-to-face communications for a teenager. That's so hard, that's hard for adults sometimes. So those kinds of things, yes, are helpful, but let's be real. It comes down to the parents just writing the check for the leagues again. So, something to consider. Don't know if maybe I'm not out of a molehill opening the can of worms.
No. And another thing with the parents of if your child's in the sport, the parents usually know what the budget is, because they have parent meetings and they go over what they need.
Right, I send out a parent
Yeah,
email.
the coaches give all that
Here's what our
information to
plan
you.
is, exactly. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Alice Struble. I live in Bernardsville. I have two daughters that go to Bedwell, and I was so happy to see the Bedwell Garden on the strategic plan. My third grader is excited about her rain gauge. I have a fourth grader who can identify monarch chrysalises, and to be honest, it's working. You know, the kids are excited. I have been, for the last, I guess, a little over a year, a volunteer on the HSA executive board. My first 2 years on the board, I was a secretary, and then for the last, I guess this is the start of my second year as the Green Team chair. And I have to say that the person I replaced and the people that she worked with did so much to establish the garden. And if it's going to be incorporated and included in after-school programs, which are growing by leaps and bounds. We have an after-school program on Tuesdays. It's called the Garden Club. The first year there was about a dozen kids. This year there's 40 kids meet after school every Tuesday that want to weed and want to learn and want to identify plants. And I know in the past, in the spring of 2017, there was a presentation. I wasn't here for it, but basically Dr. Caprice was involved and 2 other parent volunteers who now have kids in middle school, and Mr. Mack basically presented something that I'm hoping to go back and watch myself, but I just want you guys to consider that now that the garden is established and it's a part of our schools, it's an outdoor classroom, we need to think about how it can be supported and sustained going forward. And, we have a beautiful pond, we have a beautiful fence, we have parents that have raised over $6,000 to pay for that fence, and I'm just amazed by the momentum. I feel privileged and gifted that my kids can learn in that kind of classroom, but I think, we have to just keep the strategic planning going forward and think about how we can sustain this. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
Lila from Bernardsville. So as I sit here in the crowd, I hear everything in the Board of Ed meetings, and I'm a very politically active student. I run a political club, I go out and canvass for the political party I somewhat affiliate with, or more so believe in, and I enjoy sitting here and listening to what's going on. And as I sit here, so many things are brought to mind, and I'm going to share some of these things with you tonight. Problems I see with the school, or things I think should be commended. But I know a lot of my fellow students also have these thoughts and also want to contribute to the school. But I don't really know if there's a pathway for such students to voice their opinions. I know we're given polls, and I know sometimes we're asked about specific things, but I would really love for you guys to consider a way for students to voice their opinions and maybe have it like a way to voice suggestions or concerns to the school in a way that I don't really think is given now. So I wanted to open it. I wrote so many things down tonight. I'm really going to try to keep it brief because I need to go home, do some college apps. But first of all, and on world history, I took AP World History last year. It was my favorite class throughout all of BHS. I disagree with the fact that the curriculum coincided a lot with freshman world. I think that's, I completely disagree with that because half of the course, in fact, the course that's run this year, that some of my friends are in, the course that was run last year, half of that course is none of that is covered in freshman year history. However, as I talked to Mr. Shostak, I am aware that the way that the course is being changed is framed almost identical to the freshman year course. So I completely agree with changing the course into the human geography as you guys were speaking on, because I think that human geography is very interesting, and I also think that it covers a lot of the things that the world history course that is in place now that I loved so much covers. I just totally support that. One thing I want to mention, and I don't know how true this is or not, I know we have recycling bins around the school. I don't know if we recycle, so I want to ask you if we recycle, because I'm a total environmental activist, and I think that if we have recycling bins around the school and we're not recycling, I just think that that's ethically and morally wrong. But
I don't think that we would argue. Is your concern that what is put in recycling bins is perhaps not treated as recycling?
Yeah, is it recycled? You're recycling? Okay, so that's just a myth, because I've just heard from teachers and different people that the recycling is just put in the trash.
That's a concern, and that's years ago where I teach, they were dumping all the recycling.
And that was a concern at the middle school when I first got there.
I don't know if we're doing it or not doing it.
So let me say to you that I shouldn't say obviously, I am not handling recycling on a daily basis, so I'm giving you this information in good faith. My understanding is that we do recycle, however, I will make sure that that is clearly communicated and we figure out if that's actually out.
Okay, thank you, I really appreciate
the recycling truck taking the recycling.
Very nice. That makes me very happy. Because you're right, we don't want to create an impression that we are and then not do that. That would not be in anybody's business. I completely agree.
And one other thing that I wanted to note is I'm not a peer leader. I value the peer leadership program. I actually transferred into Bernards High School freshman year. I never got a peer leader. I'm kind of sad about that, but got over it. However, I know many qualified students, very qualified, some of the most caring students I know, who have applied year after year after year to become peer leaders. And I don't know why, I cannot tell you, but they're denied. I would love for you guys to reconsider how you're choosing peer leaders, because there are some questionable students on peer leaders. Well, I see these students who I know want to do it for the right reasons, because they want to connect with freshmen and they want to introduce them to the school, who are just being denied. And I really can't say why. And when I tell you these students are some of the most caring students I know in the school, I'm not exaggerating. So that's one other thing. One other thing I wanted to note was the language program. I love Spanish so much. I don't really know why, but I just love it. I came to the school from Westmore Central, where the Spanish program was fantastic. My sister graduated from Westmore Central, almost fluent in Spanish. I don't think that's possible from Bernards. I think that the language program is kind of overlooked. I don't know if it's the funding, I don't know if it's the training, but like this year I'm taking AP Spanish and Spanish for Culture and Communications, which are the highest Spanish classes you can take. And I love my teachers. I think I am learning Spanish, but I just think that the curriculum kind of, we speak in English in classes. I don't think it's strict enough. And I don't think that you're really giving students the avenue to learn a language going through the school, where it should take 5 years to learn language. I think you should leave high school almost fluent, and I think most students are not doing that. And I really, that frustrates me a lot. My mom isn't here because she can't be here. She's very sad about it. She wanted me to note a few things. She's a doctor. She's interested in, if she wants to know if she can contact the lab that operates with the drug testing to ask questions. I don't know. I'm just asking if that's possible.
She can email me any questions that she might have, and I can certainly forward them.
Okay. And then I want to talk about, I want to also just answer one of the questions that she asked last week. Okay, I'm just going to ask it. So, do you believe that the drug testing policy will push students away from possibly occasionally smoking cannabis towards more dangerous drugs? I just want to put this out there. Heroin leaves urine in 5 to 6 hours, and cocaine leaves urine in 2 to 3 days. Well, cannabis leaves urine in 2 to 3 weeks. I just want to put those facts out there for you guys to consider. With mental health, this is my last thing. Sorry. I feel that Miss Drew, I know she's not in the audience right now, she's our school counselor. You guys don't know. I feel that she's one of the most valuable administrators at her school. I formed a very close relationship with her throughout my time in high school. She provides an outlet. When you guys talked on mental health today, I think she provides a really important outlet for students to talk about their mental health during a time when so many students in their teenage years suffer with anxiety and depression. However, many times I've been into the guidance office and asked to go see her when I really need to. She's not available. So I think that if you really want to help students with mental health, an avenue for you to do that might be to expand the program of counselors at our school. That's it.
Sam, friend of Bernardsville, New Jersey, and I'm just going to jump all over a few of the things that Lala just said. One of them was the tabling of the human geography course. And I understand they're wanting to be more discussion, but what concerned me in hearing part of the reason why it was being tabled were potentially diluting the social studies or history program, and is it more sociology and world history hold more importance or credibility with colleges, and I think we're doing our children a tremendous disservice if that's the way that we're strictly looking at the courses that we're offering. And if they're changing a world history AP course to something that is not as beneficial as it was before. If the enrollment is already quite low, and we're talking about things in a strategic plan, like creating global citizens, and maybe looking towards things like the social emotional standards that are being put forth and being asked to considered by districts, not being forced implementation. But I think that you could be doing double duty in educating our kids in history, social studies, worldview, and at the same time bringing in a cultural component and expanding our students' global perspectives and perhaps really enhancing cultural engagement and understanding. I think there are so many levels that a course like that can hit on, and I think if we look at it as being soft around the edges and how does it relate to college credit, I just don't think we're giving our kids, if that's the way we're going to look at the courses that we're offering strictly, I don't know that we're doing the best by our kids and our curriculum. So I just wanted to put that out there. Oh God, what was the last thing you talked about, Lila?
Mental health.
Mental health, okay, that was the other thing. That this is something that we talk about in our executive board meetings and among parents all the time. If there were one thing as parents that we could ask for across the district, it would be more guidance counselors and another student assistant counselor. Hands down, without a doubt, that is my touch point with this community. I hear it every single day. So thank you for bringing that up because it's huge and it's not something that I think to touch on when I'm here, even though I talk about it, as Gretchen knows, ad nauseum in executive board meetings. I think it should be an absolute #1 priority for this district. I know that our program and our current staff is completely overwhelmed, and that's not able then to serve our students in the way that they need to. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lou Palmer, Gladstone. I was happy to hear that you're going to have some kind of an agreement with Bedminster. I appreciate all the work you put into that. So if I understand it correctly, you're going to have $75,000 by the end of the school year?
December 31st.
Oh, by the end of this year, great. Okay. And then the balance of the reconciliation money
We
will
sign a
be...
contract in the first quarter, and in which case we will receive the balance.
That's wonderful news. I appreciate all the work you've done to put that together, and looking forward to seeing that agreement done. Thank you very much.
I did a lot of the groundwork too, so thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll let a motion to adjourn.
You said
You had a comment?
supplementary matters, right?
Oh, yeah, this is
I had just two.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, well, it kind of morphed into all kinds of things, you're right.
It did. Hopefully they're very quick. Some schools have programs, offices, resources within the high school for youth employment, right? Where people can make themselves available and members of the community can come in and say, hey, look, I'm looking for somebody to help paint some windows or do whatever. Do we have anything like that in the high school?
I don't know that it's formalized. I can tell you that through conversations with the director of guidance, she has things come to her attention that sometimes she has a hard time finding students who are interested. Whether those look like internships or whether they look like I need somebody to paint my windows, I can't really speak to, but I could certainly do a little digging.
I would encourage us to kind of look into that for a whole host of reasons, and I do think it ties into some of the fundraising activities that we're doing for sports. I suspect that there's a gap between the demand and the willing supply out of schools to do some jobs. I think that's out there. I think having those kind of resources is useful, so I would just encourage us.
Could be a fundraising?
No, it's just a way to make money, right? Just a way to make money, right?
I think not a lot of kids either have.
A lot of kids make money. I'm just saying,
I mean, if you look at the
We
signs.
don't do a lot of, there's not a lot of kids working anymore in reality.
No, but there are a lot of help wanted signs everywhere.
Many kids also work during summers rather than during the school year. Look-
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to comment. I know Bridgewater does like a similar program where like the students, it counts as kind of like a class, but they also get paid and they get to, I guess, leave school to go work at a job, and I thought that was like a brilliant idea. I think students would be really interested in that because it does count as a class, it does add on to credits, but then they're also getting paid on top of that.
Right.
So I just thought that was a good idea. Also,
I think we had that here a gazillion years ago, because I think Mike ran it.
Many years ago.
Gazillion years ago, yeah.
One other supplementary matter is, I just want to recognize Greg for a moment, because we, as a board, you know, in honor of our dear friend Lou Palma, you know, created the Lou Palma Award, and it's just like such a special award for a student. And for a whole host of reasons, we couldn't come to terms with how to kind of memorialize that for the recipient, right, in the form of a physical award. And Greg just took it upon himself, just out of the goodness of his heart.
Oh, share, you don't have to share.
Okay. Out of the goodness of his heart, he took it upon himself to recognize the young man who received it. And he has a very big heart, and I'm super proud of him. And I just want to thank him for doing that. He's waving me off and he's going to get mad at me, but I just want to make that point.
Actually, what Tim was saying with I mean, that might be an idea with some fundraising kind of things, to get the kids, set up some kind of program where the kids can go out into the community. Parents can hire kids to work around the house, do a couple of odd jobs and do donations. It's just something I know that's very good.
My only concern is around security of students.
Security,
I feel very worried, said that was 9 years ago, and there's a difference between working in public and working in a person's private house.
The other thing I want to mention is Sam also and Mary Ann, the work you do with community crisis, the presentation that was done a few weeks ago at the high school was outstanding. I think it's something that we probably would want to try to, you know, I know you guys do a great job, it costs a lot of money to do that and put that on, and but I just see that as an invaluable experience for parents to come, ask questions, get that information, and
Just as a note, the Empower one actually cost us nothing.
Okay.
Empower Somerset did that through grants that they had secured, and they do that programming. That was a gift to us. They reached out to us. And we're always looking for those opportunities. Like, that's something that we...
I think the parents get an awful lot out of that. It's really important, and if we can keep that ongoing, and just thank you for, and Mary Ann, for all the work you guys do. I do appreciate that.
One other thing, I just wanted to make everyone aware that the Bedwell HSA is actually having a pancake breakfast and holiday shop on December 1st. So the board, the community, staff, students, families are all invited to Bedwell on December 1st. It's a Saturday morning. The Minuteman is going to be serving up pancakes and juice and coffee. I think it's $8 a person, all you can eat. So please try and get out and join us.
Minuteman restaurant.
Oh, sorry, no, it's at the Bedwell cafeteria, but the Minuteman is the one doing the cooking at Bedwell.
Any other comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.